Ethan Cole never planned to be a hero. He was a small-time human salvage pilot drifting through the outer edges of mapped space, chasing signals that other captains were too afraid or too bored to follow. His ship, the Rust Sparrow, was old, patched together from dozens of scrapyard finds, and powered by an engine that groaned like it was always one bad jump away from failure. Ethan liked it that way. Quiet jobs, quiet space, and no attention. That peace ended the moment his scanner caught a strange distress signal. The signal pulsed in a tight pattern, sharp and clean, nothing like the messy emergency beacons used by most traders. Ethan frowned at the console and leaned closer. The coordinates placed the source inside a restricted war zone, controlled by an alien empire known for its strict borders and brutal internal politics. Salvagers avoided that region for a reason. He almost turned away. But the signal flickered again, weaker this time. Whatever was sending it was dying. Ethan sighed, rubbed his tired eyes, and adjusted the Sparrow's course. He told himself it was just another salvage opportunity. Rare tech from a war zone could pay for a year of fuel. When he arrived, the scene was worse than he expected. Wreckage floated in silence, twisted metal, shattered hulls, and frozen clouds of debris. In the center drifted a small escape pod shaped like a silver tear. It spun slowly, sparks flashing from a cracked panel. Ethan guided the Sparrow closer and extended a magnetic clamp. The pod resisted for a second, then locked into place. His sensors showed a single life sign inside, faint but stable. He hesitated. Picking up survivors from alien conflicts could invite trouble. Still, leaving someone to die in the cold dark felt wrong. He cycled the airlock and pried open the pod. Inside lay a figure unlike any human he had seen in person. The alien woman had pale blue skin that shimmered softly under the emergency lights. Fine patterns traced her arms like glowing tattoos. She wore elegant armor, cracked and scorched, and a thin circlet rested on her forehead. A deep cut marked her shoulder, and her breathing was shallow. For a moment, Ethan just stared. Then, training took over. He lifted her carefully and carried her into the Sparrow's small medical bay. The ship's scanner beeped as it analyzed her biology. Thankfully, her species shared enough similarities with humans for basic treatment to work. As the auto-medic sealed her wound, alarms screamed across Ethan's cockpit. 3 ships dropped out of warp at the edge of sensor range. Their sleek black hulls matched the wreckage outside. They were searching. Ethan's heart pounded. He killed all external lights and powered down non-essential systems. The Sparrow drifted among the debris, pretending to be just another broken piece of metal. The enemy ships spread out, scanning them all. Ethan muttered under his breath and gripped the controls. The Sparrow was not built for combat. Running was his only option. He waited until the last second, then slammed the engine to full power. The ship burst forward, weaving through floating wreckage. Laser fire flashed behind him, slicing apart debris where he had been seconds before. He pushed the Sparrow harder than it liked. Panels rattled, warning lights blinked red. The enemy ships followed in tight formation, faster and more advanced. Ethan scanned the field ahead and spotted a dense cluster of wreckage spinning slowly. An idea formed. He cut power suddenly. The Sparrow shot into the spinning debris cloud and went dark. Using only manual thrusters, Ethan guided the ship through narrow gaps, matching the rotation of the wreckage. The enemy ships hesitated outside the cloud, their larger frames unable to follow easily. Ethan held his breath as one ship attempted to enter. It clipped a chunk of metal and spun out of control, crashing into another vessel. The explosion lit the darkness in a brief, violent bloom. Using the chaos as cover, Ethan reignited his engine and jumped to warp. Silence returned. His hands trembled as adrenaline faded. He checked the medical bay. The alien woman still lived. As if sensing his presence, her eyes fluttered open. They were a deep violet, sharp and alert, despite her weakness. She sat up too quickly, wincing in pain. Her gaze locked onto Ethan, and she spoke in a rapid stream of musical sounds. His translator struggled for a second, then found a match. "Where am I?" she asked. "On a human salvage ship," Ethan replied. "You were about to become space dust." "I picked you up." She studied him with intense focus. You saved me from the hunters." "Looks like it," he said. "They seemed pretty determined." "They are traitors. My escort was destroyed." "I am..." She hesitated, as if weighing her words. "I am of the royal line of the..." Of all the survivors he could have found, he had rescued a princess in the middle of an alien civil conflict. He laughed softly, thinking it was a joke. Her serious expression told him it was not. "That sounds complicated," he said. "It is," she answered, "and now you are part of it." Before he could ask what she meant, new signals appeared on his scanner. More ships. A full patrol this time. Closing fast. The princess rose unsteadily and moved to the cockpit, her eyes widening at the display. "They will not," she said quietly. "If they capture me, the Empire will fall into chaos." Ethan gritted his teeth. He could drop her at the nearest neutral station and disappear. That would be the smart move. But the fear in her voice and the memory of the wreckage outside pushed him forward. "Hold on," he said. "I have one more trick." He rerouted power from life support to the engine and aimed the Sparrow toward a nearby asteroid belt. The rocks were dense and unstable, pulled by conflicting gravitational forces. No sane pilot would enter at high speed. Ethan did. The Sparrow plunged into the maze of spinning stone. Alarms wailed as fragments scraped the hull. Behind them, the enemy ships followed, unwilling to lose their target. Ethan relied on instinct and years of risky flying. He twisted the ship through impossible gaps, using the asteroids as shields. A massive rock tumbled into their path. Ethan fired a grappling line, hooked the asteroid, and swung the Sparrow around it in a tight arc. The sudden maneuver sent one pursuing ship crashing into the rock. Another tried to pull away and collided with its ally. The path ahead cleared. Ethan shot out of the belt and engaged warp for the Aurelian home system, coordinates provided by the princess. Only when the stars stretched into lines did he allow himself to breathe. The princess looked at him with something like awe. "No Aurelian commander would attempt such madness," she said. "Good thing I'm human," Ethan replied with a tired grin. She stepped closer and placed a hand over her heart in a formal gesture. "You have saved my life twice. By the sacred laws of my people, such a debt binds our fates. You are now under my protection, and I under yours." Ethan did not fully understand her words, but the weight behind them was clear. He nodded awkwardly. "Just doing what anyone should." As the warp tunnel shimmered around them, a massive planet appeared ahead, glowing with city lights and orbital rings. Fleets of ships surrounded it like a protective shell. The Aurelian capital. Ethan felt very small as the Sparrow approached. Dozens of sleek warships moved to intercept, surrounding his battered vessel. A calm voice filled the cockpit, requesting identification. The princess stepped forward and spoke a single command. The formation changed instantly. The warships parted, escorting the Sparrow toward the planet like an honored guest. Ethan stared at the view, realizing that his quiet life had just ended. He had rescued a stranger in need, expecting nothing more than payment and a story to tell. Instead, he was flying into the heart of an alien empire, beside a princess whose fate was now tangled with his own. And deep down, beneath the fear and uncertainty, he felt a spark of excitement. Ethan's first steps on the surface of the Aurelian capital were careful, almost hesitant. The city sprawled across towering plateaus of shining metal, connected by glowing bridges that pulsed with energy. Ships of every size moved through the sky like schools of fish, and the hum of engines and machinery filled the air with a constant low vibration. It was alien, beautiful, and intimidating. The princess, who had introduced herself as Ceres, led him through the streets in a calm, purposeful stride. Her violet eyes scanned every building, every citizen, and every patrol ship. Despite her injuries from the escape, she moved with regal confidence that Ethan couldn't help but admire. She spoke little, letting her attendants handle the questions and greetings of those around them. When they arrived at the royal palace, Ethan realized the scale of what he had entered. The palace stretched for miles, a complex of towers, gardens, and energy fields that shimmered under the twin suns. Guards in polished armor bowed as Ceres passed, but they all regarded Ethan with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. He felt small, out of place, like a piece of scrap metal in a museum. Inside the palace, he was brought before the High Council of the Empire. Dozens of Aurelian nobles sat in a semicircle, their faces carved with sharp angles and eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light. Ceres stood beside him, her posture perfect, her expression stern. "Humans," one of the council members began, his voice like a blade through the air. "They are unpredictable, dangerous, and fragile. Why is one here, in the heart of our empire? This one saved me. He risked his life when others would have left me to die. By our law, his courage and his choice bind him to me. He is now under my protection and my command." Murmurs filled the chamber. Some council members leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Others whispered to one another. Ethan tried to speak, but Ceres's hand on his arm stopped him. "He has not been given the choice yet," she said softly, her gaze locking onto his. One of the older nobles, tall and thin, rose. "Princess, this is absurd. A human? You cannot bind him to our laws. He is not Aurelian." "He is an outsider." Ceres did not flinch. "I am the ruler in waiting." "My word carries the authority of our traditions. He has proven himself worthy in ways that many of you have not. He saved me, and in doing so, he saved the Empire from chaos." Ethan swallowed hard. I didn't mean to, He trailed off. Words failed him. This was bigger than any rescue mission he had imagined. This was politics, war, and tradition all mixed together, and he had no idea how to navigate it. Before the council could argue further, alarms blared throughout the palace. Red lights flashed. Ethan's pulse jumped. Ceres's attendants rushed to the windows, and she stepped forward, her voice calm but urgent. "They are here," she said, "the faction that killed my escort. They have followed us into the city." Ethan didn't need to be told twice. He raced to the command room with Ceres, scanning the city's defensive systems. Ships and automated defenses were preparing for battle, but they were outnumbered. Ethan felt the familiar rush of adrenaline. He was in his element now, even if the stakes were higher than anything he had ever faced. Using his knowledge of human engineering, he identified a weak point in the enemy formation. The city's shields were strong but had gaps in the anti-air grid that human ships could exploit. He suggested a risky maneuver to Ceres's commanders, one that no Aurelian pilot would dare attempt.
"Ethan, are you sure?" Ceres asked. Her voice was calm, but there was a flicker of worry in her eyes. "As sure as I can be," he said. "Trust me." With the council watching and the palace's elite pilots ready, Ethan guided a small strike team through the gaps in the enemy formation.
They moved fast, weaving between orbital defenses and striking the enemy ships at their weak points. The Aurelian pilots were amazed at his intuition and fearlessness. Explosions rocked the city's perimeter, and enemy ships began to falter. Ethan's strike team exploited every opening, disabling key vessels and forcing the attackers to retreat. The council watched in stunned silence as the human outsider single-handedly turned the tide of the battle. When the last enemy ship was destroyed or fled, the palace erupted in controlled celebration. Citizens cheered from the streets and soldiers saluted Ethan. Saris approached him, her expression unreadable. "You have proven yourself, not just by saving me, but by saving our people," she said. "Your courage is undeniable. Yet, your presence here is not fully understood by many. They see only that you are human, an outsider." Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know how to fix that. I just did what made sense to me." Ceres smiled faintly. "And that is exactly why you are needed here. The Empire must see that strength is not limited to birth or bloodline. Actions define us." The council slowly nodded, some with reluctance, some with admiration. Ethan could feel the tension in the room shift. He was still an outsider, but now he had a voice, a presence, and influence. That night, in the palace gardens, Ceres spoke more openly. She explained the political situation. Her father, the former emperor, had died under mysterious circumstances, and factions within the empire were vying for power. Some wanted her removed, others wanted to use her as a pawn. If she fell, the empire would fracture, and war would spread across the galaxy. Ethan listened, absorbing the gravity of the situation. His mind raced. He was a salvage pilot, not a soldier or diplomat. Yet here he was, in the heart of a political storm, standing beside a princess who had already risked everything for him. "You don't have to stay," Sarah said quietly, looking at him. "I can find others to help me. Humans are fragile."
You have your own world, your own life.
"I can't. I won't let anyone else die if I can stop it." "You trusted me once. I won't betray that." Her eyes softened, but she remained guarded. "By our law, your choice is respected. But your actions bind you to the Empire now, whether you wish it or not. You are part of this, and for that, I am grateful." Over the next few days, Ethan learned the palace's routines and customs. Every detail was alien, rituals, etiquette, even the way meals were served. But he adapted quickly. The palace staff watched in quiet amazement as the human outsider learned quickly, asked questions, and offered solutions to problems they had accepted as unchangeable. Assassins continued to strike in the shadows, and rival nobles whispered in the corridors. Ethan was constantly on alert, combining human ingenuity with Ceres's knowledge of her empire. Together, they devised strategies to protect the city, strengthen alliances, and expose corruption among the council members who sought to undermine her rule. One evening, while reviewing intelligence reports in the palace tower, Ethan realized how much he had changed.
He was no longer just a pilot or a rescuer.
He had become a strategist, a protector, and, in a way, a symbol. The citizens had begun to see him as a hero, a human who could stand beside their princess and challenge the old ways. Ceres entered silently, standing beside him as they watched the city below. "You have done more than I could have hoped," she said. "Not just in skill, but in spirit. You have shaken the foundations of this empire in ways no one expected. I just try to survive, and sometimes helping people is better than surviving alone." Her violet eyes met his, and for the first time, she allowed a small smile. "Perhaps that is exactly what makes you worthy of what is to come." Ethan had no idea what she meant, but he sensed the weight of it. For the first time, he realized that his life would never return to the quiet, drifting existence he once knew. He had entered a world of royalty, politics, and danger, and somehow, against all odds, he was already making a difference. As night fell over the glowing city, Ethan and Ceres stood together in silence, watching the stars above. He felt the strange, unsettling certainty that the adventure had only just begun, and that his choices would shape not only their fates, but the future of an entire empire. The human who had intended to be just a rescuer was now a central figure in a galactic game of power, loyalty, and survival, and there was no turning back. Ethan woke before dawn, the twin suns of the Aurelian capital, not yet peeking over the horizon. The palace was quiet, but the tension in the air was thick. Saris had spent the night reviewing intelligence reports and plotting defensive maneuvers. She looked tired but determined, her violet eyes reflecting the glow of holographic star maps that filled the strategy room.
"Another message from the outer systems," her aide said, projecting a hologram that displayed multiple planets and fleets. "The rebel faction has captured 3 star systems."
They claim allegiance to a rival claimant and are gaining support among the people.
Ethan leaned over the table, studying the data. The systems were critical. If the rebels held them, the Empire's supply lines and communication networks would collapse. It would be chaos, and Saris's authority would weaken even further. "They're using conventional tactics," Ethan said, pointing at the holographic battle lines. "They expect predictable responses. If we can outmaneuver them, we can slow them down. Maybe even force a surrender before more systems fall." Saris looked at him, a mixture of curiosity and caution. "You are suggesting we fight them differently. How?" Ethan explained his plan using a mix of human logic and practical improvisation. Instead of attacking the rebel fleets head-on, he proposed splitting the Imperial forces into smaller units that could outflank the enemy, using unpredictable maneuvers, decoy ships, and surprise attacks in asteroid fields and nebulae, where alien sensors were less effective. The Council was hesitant. "A human plan? Are we to risk the Empire on a gamble?" one noble demanded. Saris's voice rang clear. "We risk nothing by doing what we already know will fail. If we follow his plan, we may gain the advantage. Trust him." Ethan felt the weight of her words. Go, alone, go. He wasn't just giving advice. He was leading an entire empire's defense strategy. The gravity of it pressed down on him, but he pushed the fear aside. Fear was something humans survived on, something that sharpened instincts. Within hours, the fleet mobilized. Ethan was in the command ship, standing beside Saris as the stars stretched into lines of warp. The rebel ships were waiting, confident in their strength. They expected routine tactics.
They did not expect the unpredictable. The first engagement was tense.
Ethan directed a small squadron into the edge of a dense asteroid belt. Sensors reported heavy rebel movement, but the natural cover of the asteroids allowed them to strike unseen. Using synchronized bursts and sudden evasive maneuvers, they disabled several enemy vessels before the main fleet even realized what was happening. From the observation deck, Saris watched the plan unfold. Her people were astonished. Never before had a human demonstrated such unconventional thinking on a battlefield of this scale. She could feel the eyes of her council members on her. Some were amazed, others skeptical, but all had to admit the results were undeniable. The rebels adapted quickly, sending reinforcements and attempting to trap Ethan's squadron, but he anticipated their moves, using decoy ships to lure enemy vessels into traps among the asteroid clusters. He watched, calculated, and issued commands with calm precision. Hours later, the rebels began to retreat from the first system. The morale of the Imperial forces surged. Citizens on the outer world sent messages of hope. Inspired by the success, Ethan began to realize that his human perspective, flexible, creative, unorthodox, was changing how the Empire approached conflict. Despite the victories, danger remained. Ethan knew that a direct confrontation with the rebel leadership was inevitable. The rebel faction controlled the key system of Valdora, a heavily fortified planet where their main fleet was concentrated. Mysterious considered sending her strongest ships for a direct assault, but Ethan insisted on a different approach. "We can't just hit them with brute force," he said, pacing the command deck.
They expect it. We need to outsmart them.
Divide them, force them to make mistakes, and then strike when they're off balance. Sari studied him. "Your methods are risky. Failure could cost thousands of lives.
Risk is part of every battle, but if we do nothing, we lose even more.
I have a plan. I just need your trust.
She nodded, a small but firm gesture. You have it. The next phase of the campaign began. Ethan led a team of elite pilots, combining human improvisation with Aurelian precision. They infiltrated Valdora's outer defenses using small, fast ships that could slip through patrols and automated turrets. They sabotaged communications, creating confusion among the rebel fleets. When the rebels attempted to regroup, they were met with unexpected resistance. Imperial forces struck from angles they had not predicted, cutting off escape routes and isolating key ships. Ethan's tactics minimized civilian casualties while maximizing pressure on the enemy leadership. The battle reached its climax when the rebel commander deployed a massive warship capable of destroying entire planetary defenses. Ethan assessed the situation and proposed a daring move. Using a combination of asteroid manipulation, energy fields, and small strike teams, they would disable the warship's engines long enough to board it. Saris hesitated.
It's suicidal, she said. Maybe, Ethan admitted.
But it's the only way. The operation was tense. Imperial ships created distractions, while Ethan led a boarding party onto the massive warship. Inside, corridors twisted and pulsed with alien energy. The rebel crew was formidable, but they were unprepared for human unpredictability. Using clever maneuvers and coordinated strikes, Ethan's team reached the control room. The rebel commander was there, waiting, a mix of rage and disbelief on his face. A human? Here? Do you truly believe you can defeat me? Ethan didn't answer with words. He acted. He triggered the ship's core shutdown sequence, using the systems in ways the aliens had never imagined. Alarms blared, lights flickered, and the massive vessel lost power. The rebel commander's forces were trapped, unable to respond. Outside, the Imperial fleet seized the opportunity, neutralizing the remaining rebel ships and forcing a surrender. Victory was theirs, and the citizens of the captured systems cheered as news spread. Back on the command ship, Saris approached Ethan, her expression a mixture of relief and admiration. You have done more than save me. You have saved the Empire. Your decisions, your courage, they have inspired loyalty and hope where there was none. Ethan shook his head. I just did what made sense. I didn't think about inspiring anyone. I just didn't want to see more people die. Saris smiled faintly. Sometimes what makes sense to humans shakes entire worlds. You have proven that leadership is not about blood or birth. It is about choice, courage, and action. For the first time, Ethan felt the weight of his influence. He had entered the Empire as an outsider, a human, with no place in their hierarchy. Now he was a key figure in their survival, a symbol of ingenuity and bravery. The Council formally recognized his contributions, granting him a title of honor that carried authority in the Empire. Nobles who had once whispered against him now sought his advice. Even soldiers treated him with respect, curious about the strange human who could outthink trained Aurelian strategists. Yet, despite the accolades, Ethan remained grounded. He knew the Empire's problems were far from over. External threats loomed on the horizon, and internal factions still harbored resentment. But for the first time, he felt that his actions mattered, that he was more than a simple salvage pilot. Late that evening, Sirius invited him to the palace gardens. The twin suns had set, leaving the sky dark and dotted with distant stars. The air was cool, filled with the scent of alien flowers. You have changed everything, she said softly, her violet eyes reflecting the starlight. Not just with your actions, but with what you have shown the people, that courage and ingenuity are not limited to one species.
I never thought I'd end up here. I just did what anyone would, I guess.
She stepped closer, placing a hand on his arm. No,
Not anyone. A human, yes.
But not anyone. You chose to act when many would have hesitated. That choice, it has altered the course of our history. Ethan looked at her, realizing the truth in her words. He was no longer just a visitor in the Aurelian Empire. He was a force that could change its destiny. And as he stood beside Ceres in the quiet of the palace gardens, he felt something stir deep within him. A sense of belonging, purpose, and a connection that went beyond duty. The Empire had faced rebellion and survived, but even as they celebrated, Ethan knew the challenges were far from over. A greater threat waited beyond the stars, and the choices he and Ceres would make next could determine the fate of millions. For now, though, he allowed himself a rare moment of satisfaction. He had become more than a human pilot lost in the vastness of space. He had become a strategist, a protector, and a symbol. And the story of the human who stood beside the Aurelian princess was only beginning to unfold. The victory over the rebels had given the Aurelian Empire a fragile peace, but Ethan knew it would not last. Reports from the Outer Rim brought news that chilled even the most confident commanders. An external alien force unlike any they had encountered was moving toward the Empire at a speed that left little time for preparation. Ships of unknown design, massive and dark, appeared on long-range sensors, their energy signatures unlike anything the Aurelians had catalogued.
Ethan and Ceres convened the council immediately.
The great strategy room buzzed with tension. Holographic maps of star systems filled the space, red markers indicating the approaching fleet.
They are advanced beyond our current understanding, said one of the senior generals, his tone grave. Our weapons may not even scratch them.
What do you suggest? Ethan ran a hand through his hair, studying the map. We can't fight them like the rebels.
This is different. This is not a civil war. This is survival.
We need speed, intelligence, and tactics they won't expect. He outlined a plan that combined human ingenuity with Aurelian technology.
Instead of meeting the fleet head-on, they would split the Empire's ships into smaller, more agile units. Some would draw the enemy in predictable directions, while others struck from angles they could not anticipate. Ethan also suggested using orbital defenses, asteroid fields, and gravitational anomalies to create traps. "The Council!" murmured nervously.
Risking our fleet like this? One noble asked. Risk is the only option that gives us a chance, Ethan said firmly.
If we stand and fight normally, we lose everything. Ceres's gaze met his. We will follow your plan. But know this, if we fail, it is not just the Empire that falls. Millions will die. Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He had never commanded so many lives, but fear sharpened his mind. When the alien fleet arrived in the outer systems, the battle began. Ethan led the first strike team through an asteroid belt that the invaders assumed would be impassable. Using rapid maneuvers, his small ships disabled critical sections of their formation. The enemy fleet responded, sending massive energy beams that disintegrated ships in seconds, but Ethan's unpredictable patterns allowed most of his team to evade the strikes. From the observation deck of the command ship, Ceres watched with both awe and anxiety. Ethan's tactics were unlike anything her pilots had ever executed. He improvised in real time, using the environment and even the enemy's expectations against them. Hours passed. Ships moved like chess pieces across the stars, striking, retreating, and striking again. Ethan coordinated with Ceres, who used her authority to move the Imperial fleet with precision. Together, they created a strategy that combined human unpredictability with Aurelian discipline. Yet the enemy adapted faster than anyone expected. One of their massive warships broke through the outer defenses, targeting the capital's main planetary shield. Ethan realized that conventional methods would not stop it. He needed a bold move, something dangerous, something that could change the course of the battle in seconds.
Ceres, I need a volunteer team to board that ship, he said, pointing at the holographic display. We disable its engines from the inside while the fleet keeps it distracted. If we fail, there's no coming back.
Ceres stepped forward.
I go with them, she said. "We will not risk civilians more than necessary, and I will not let my people die while I stay behind."
She was fearless, not reckless. "Then we do it together," he said. "We both go. Half the chance of failure is still better than none." The boarding mission was tense beyond anything Ethan had experienced. Their small ships weaved past massive energy cannons, docking onto the alien warship under fire. Inside, the corridors were dark, humming with alien technology. Guards of the invading force confronted them. But Ethan's team, led by him and Saris, moved with precision and speed. They reached the engine core, a massive chamber filled with pulsating energy. The alien technology was unlike anything Ethan had seen, but he quickly assessed its functions, improvising a method to overload the power flow. Saris coordinated with him, providing critical knowledge of alien engineering protocols. As the overload began, alarms screamed throughout the ship. The invaders struggled to regain control, but Ethan's modifications prevented them from stabilizing. He glanced at Saris. "Almost there. On my mark." They initiated the final sequence, and the warship shuddered violently. Lights flickered, and energy surged across the hull. The alien vessel lost power just as the Imperial fleet struck from above. The combination of Ethan's boarding operation and the fleet's attacks crippled the invaders, forcing them to retreat. When the battle ended, the Empire had survived, but the cost was heavy. Several ships were lost, and many lives had been sacrificed. Ethan and Saris returned to the palace, exhausted but alive. The citizens cheered their heroes, celebrating their survival against impossible odds. In the calm that followed, Saris approached Ethan privately. "You saved us," she said softly. "Not just from the rebels, but from a threat none of us could have faced alone. We did it together. I didn't do it alone." "Perhaps, but it was your perspective, your creativity, that tipped the balance."
Humans think differently, and it made all the difference. Ethan realized that she was right.
His human instincts, his ability to improvise and adapt, had given the Empire a chance when everything seemed lost. For the first time since he had arrived in the Aurelian Empire, Ethan felt a deep connection to this world, to its people, and to Saris. The bond between them had grown beyond duty or law. They had fought side by side, faced impossible odds, and survived. The Council formally recognized Ethan's contributions once again, not just as a hero, but as a trusted advisor. Nobles who had doubted him now sought his counsel, and soldiers regarded him as a symbol of courage and ingenuity. Yet, even as the Empire celebrated, Ethan knew their challenges were not over. The galaxy was vast, and threats always loomed beyond the stars. But for the first time, he felt that he belonged somewhere. He had a purpose, allies, and a role that mattered. One evening, Saris invited him to the palace gardens. The twin suns had set, leaving the sky dark and filled with stars. The gardens glowed with bioluminescent flora, their light reflecting off the silver pathways.
"You've changed everything,"
she said quietly, taking his hand. "You've shown our people that strength is not defined by birth, and courage is not limited to any one species. You've proven that humanity can be more than what we imagined." Ethan looked at her, feeling the weight of her words. "I never asked for this," he admitted. "I just did what I had to do." "And that is exactly why you are worthy. Not because you were forced into this, but because you chose to act. That choice has saved millions and given hope where there was none." Ethan smiled, a mixture of relief and realization. For the first time, he understood that his life had changed forever, not because of law or prophecy or obligation, but because of the choices he had made and the bonds he had forged. They stood together in the quiet of the palace gardens, looking up at the stars. Ethan knew the path ahead would not be easy. There would be more battles, more decisions, and more sacrifices, but he also knew that he would not face them alone. The Aurelian Empire had survived because of courage, ingenuity, and partnership. And for Ethan, the human who had once been a simple salvage pilot, it was the beginning of a new life. One filled with challenges, victories, and a bond that had grown beyond duty into something far more profound. Together they would face the future, shaping the destiny of a galaxy that now included humanity in its story. And in that knowledge, Ethan felt a rare, unshakable certainty that no matter what came next, he and Saris would meet it together. The stars above stretched endlessly, and beneath their glow a human and an alien princess stood united, not by law, not by obligation, but by courage, trust, and choice. And in that unity, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what would come next.